morning. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Paris. This is getting close to the end of the month, getting close to the end of the summer. And if it doesn't start cooling off, nothing is going to make me happier. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Paris. It is August 30th, 2015. For those of you that are watching this down the road after the rapture or whatever. On Sunday mornings, I have started going back to preaching old-fashioned sermons. For going on to 10 years, this has been a program through the Bible. The first 5 years, we went through the Bible. And I read every word, pronounced every name. We read every city, every listing of groups of people and places. It's been 4 or 5 years now that we started through for the second time. This time, we are going, although you don't always see me reading from it, but we are going through the chronological Bible, meaning we are doing things in the order in which they happen. So midstream, I made another change. It hasn't changed my commitment at all. But the change is that we go through the whole Bible, but on Sunday evenings, we're in the New Testament, and Sunday and Wednesday evenings, we're in the Old Testament. That, because the New Testament is smaller, means we will go through the New Testament probably twice during the time we go once through the Old, which is good, because if you haven't figured it out, we are in the New Testament. And those are the things that apply to our edification. The Old Testament applies to our knowledge of history and certainly helps us understand the New Testament. But it is the New Testament times in which we live. So Sunday mornings, I've started just preaching whatever I feel, as we preachers say, led to talk about. Today will be the third and last, or the third of 4 sermons or teachings about the Levirate, as it's pronounced in some languages, and I've always said Levirate Law. Our first 2 lessons, now the first one is not up on tape yet. Our first one had to do with the explanation of the Levirate Law, why we have it, why we needed it, and an occasion in which it was abused by a fellow by the name of Onan. We had a man by the name of Judah. You've heard of Israel and his 12 sons, and you've heard of the 12 tribes of Israel. Judah was one of those sons, older than his younger brother Joseph, but definitely one of the older sons. The Levirate Law, briefly, if a man dies without a male heir, his nearest kinsman will marry his widow, give her a son. That son will then carry on the name, the progeny, etc. of the deceased. Judah's first son, is dead. I won't take time to go into details because I'll be making that video and putting it up soon if you missed it. But it was an occasion in which Onan did not follow through with everything he was supposed to do. And so he, as a result, is dead. There is one son left. You can understand a father having lost two sons for not complying and waiting now for a boy to turn into a young man so that he can give a male son to his older brother's wife. In our second lesson, we talked about the father, Judah. He waited and waited and waited. I think he probably had no intention of giving his third son to Tamar for fear that having lost two, he would be without a son. And so she played the harlot and produced a child, not by her husband, not by the brothers who had a duty to perform, and up till now it has not been performed. So she played the part of a harlot, tricked her father-in-law, and produces a son. We now go to another part of the Bible. And this is among the most beautiful love stories of the Bible. We have the book of Esther is a beautiful love story. And then, of course, we have Song of Solomon, which is another love story, considerably different from Ruth or Esther. Nevertheless, a love story. And every time we have a love story in the Bible, it's typical of the relationship between the Lord Jesus Christ and the church. The church being that body of believers. Now, in the New Testament age, those of us who've been saved, who are serving the Lord, who have been born again. So whenever we have love between a young woman and a man, it is always biblical studies called types, where something is a type of something else. And this story is a type of the relationship between the Lord Jesus Christ and that group of born-again believers for whom Jesus will someday, surely very soon, return. And when he does, well, we can read the book of Revelation to find out what the rest of the world will be doing. But those of us who are born again, who have been raptured or resurrected, will go through a period of about 7 years. And that period of time will be called the wedding feast of the bridegroom. You know, those Old Testament weddings, some of them went on, some went a day or two because that's all the bride's family could afford. But some went for a week or more. But once it was determined that the bride was a virgin, then the celebration, the wedding was on, the feast was on. And that is exactly what Christ is looking for. Someone who is true and faithful to him. Not somebody that, well, I love you today, but interesting things are happening someplace else and I'm going somewhere else. Spend my time with, like many Christians do. Things get tough. The doctor uses that word, the C word, cancer, and people start finding the need to get a little closer. to the one for whom they've been professing love all this time. All right, here we are in the book. We are 10 minutes now into our sermon, and we're in the book of Ruth. Ruth has only 4 chapters. It is a true story. By the way, those who believe that homosexuality is biblical and acceptable to God, fine. And I want you to listen carefully to see if you can find a clue, because I don't know where these people are coming from. But they will try to find a couple of places in the Bible where they say these two people were in love. Others do this with supposed illicit relationships with the Lord. What people are hoping to do is find something in the Bible that is either what they're doing or they want to do. And then they could say, see, it's biblical. It happened in the Bible. And watch for the relationship between Ruth and her daughter-in-law, Neomi. If you can find a clue, and you're on the live show, write me a little note and say, check this out. If you're watching the video, leave me a comment and say, oh, I found homosexuality here, and give me the chapter and the verse. I haven't found it in these many times I've preached this sermon. But some insisted. I think it's the craziest thing in the world. I think when you watch the details of this love story, you will find just the opposite. All right, Ruth. There is a family. They live in Bethlehem. We hear the word Bethlehem. What do we think of where Jesus was born? Later, Jerusalem, because it's the capital and David became king. Jerusalem is known as the city of David, but for years and in prophecy, the city of David is Bethlehem. Now, we haven't gotten to David yet. We're not that far along in history. Just keep in mind that's where this story is eventually going. This was during the time of the Judges. You know, we had Moses brought the people up to the Jordan River. God said, you're not going through. You're not going over. Joshua will take your place. Joshua was the one who brought the Israelites into the promised land. Did not do a perfect job, but emptied the land mostly. Supposed to have been completely, but mostly of non-Israelites. And we get then the boundaries. And of course, the people who live there are of the 12 tribes of Israel. So what we're doing now is actually before the time of our last 2 lessons. During the time of the Judges, there was a famine in Bethlehem. And there was a man that had a wife and 2 sons. And he went to Moab to live, looking for food. We do that in our day and age. I see that, you know, I'm doing so many things at the same time. I guess it's called multitasking. I just noticed that we are being featured and have been for the last 9 minutes. So we have an additional dozen that are watching us from outside. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that when we're no longer featured, you might want to consider joining our program. All right, so we have a man and his wife and his 2 sons. We don't know their ages. things are rough in Israel. So just like what would you do? You'd go to the next state to look for a job. You hear, yeah, my dad left farm in Missouri and went up to Detroit because he heard they're hiring in the automobile plants. So he and his wife and his two sons go to Moab. We've heard a lot about Moab. Moab in general is an enemy of Israel. We had these three countries, Moab, Mount Seir, and Edom, where the residents, inhabitants of these lands are there, and they are populated, and this is what makes them enemies of Israel. They are populated by people who had in the past a problem with Abraham or Isaac, like Esau, Jacob, Israel's twin brother, who lost his birthright. That's a big thing. Abraham's first son, and claimed by Arabs and especially Muslims to be the son who should have birthrights, being Abraham's first. He was, however, the daughter of an Egyptian, the maid of Abraham's wife, Sarah. So he didn't count as far as prophecies being made to Abraham's son. That had to do only with the Hebrews. His offspring. So we have Esau and Ishmael, and those that aren't historically were not friendly with Israel. But they crossed the river. These places are all the other side of the Jordan River. Crossed the river and went there to live. His name is Elimelech, and his wife's name is Naomi. His two sons were Mahlon and Chilion. Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the land of Moab and settled there. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died. That left her with two sons. The deal of the Levirate, or Levirate Law, was twofold. The one in the Bible has to do with carrying on the dead man's name, property, everything he owned, through an arrangement whereby a near kinsman would marry his widow. They would have a son. This son would legally belong to a dead man. Just like if you adopt somebody. I mean, Donald Trump could adopt me. And in his will, I'd be right up there with Ivanka and the rest of his kids. Not same culture, no same bloodlines, no family, nothing, except if he were to adopt me. And you say, that's funny, you're an old lady. It can be done. I had somebody approach me. They were trying to get somebody into the country legally faster and asked me if I would consider adopting them. First of all, it wasn't anybody I even wanted to be friends with, let alone a young man whose personality and lack of gifts lack of knowing how to behave, wanting something for, I mean, this is just not anybody I would want as a close friend, let alone a son. But the providing of a male child then took this dead man, and his family name went on. His property, somebody could legally live there. Near kinsman. Kinsman means to be kin, is to be related. Near kinsman is to have, as near as possible, the same DNA at a time when, I mean, I had never heard of DNA before O.J. Simpson, and I worked in the court system. I was a legal interpreter, translator. But near kinsman is the one whose DNA would be as close as possible to the deceased, to the one who is dead. And since it has to be a male, that would be your brother. Your full brother would have the same mother and same father. So that's who the near kinsman was. Well, what if you didn't have a brother? Well, you got a cousin, you got a nephew, you've got an uncle. You go for the nearest, and usually that's a brother. We're going to find out today it's not a brother. Two that were considered were not brothers. All right. They went to Moab. Elimelech dies. There were two sons. Her sons, we don't know whether already or immediately or sometime later, the sons married women from Moab and took them as their wife. One was Orpha, and the other one was Ruth. They lived in Moab about 10 years. All right. Girls got married about 14, 15 years old. Marriages were arranged by the father of the girl and the bridegroom. Bridegroom was usually older. Usually, and still in certain Mideast countries, you'll still find this. Guys don't get married till 30, 35. They're getting settled in whatever their job is. They're building a house. They're getting together, whatever they need to be successful, and then they take a wife. I'm guessing if Naomi gets married at 15 and has two sons, let's make her about 20 years old. If the father died immediately, she's still 30, 35 at this particular time. They lived in Moab about 10 years. Now, the two husbands, her two sons die. So we have a Hebrew woman. I'm thinking pretty close to 40. And the two daughters-in-law, they are probably around 20, give or take 5 years. Okay. So now we have a widow of a Hebrew living in a foreign land. Her two daughters-in-law are native. They are Moabites. And we have now two widows younger than her who are related to her only through marriage. They're not the same culture. They're not from the same country. They're not from the same religion. They are only part of the family because she and the men in her life, hi, kinsman, and did it, and Granny didn't see you all pop up. So we now have them. They have very little in common. Very little in common. The age is different. Culture. They serve different gods. But we have three women who are widows. Now, Naomi decides to go back to her country. You know, she and her husband are from there. Now, her kids are, well, they are Hebrews by blood, by family. They did grow up in another country. I know people who have grown up in this country and don't even speak their native language. And except for their bloodlines, they might as well be Americans. But she has a reason, lots of reasons, to go back to Israel. The daughters-in-law don't. They've never been in Israel. Their only contact was their husbands and their mom and dad-in-law. It would be logical. They are probably 20, 25. It would be logical for them to remain in Moab and for Naomi to go back. They're on their way to the border, and the two young women are very, very nice. They go along with her, and as they get to where they're about ready to say goodbye, things get a little emotional. I'm sure they had, you can teaspoon as soon as I finish, and the reason is that I'm making a video, and but I'll be happy to take that question, and that's and they're not in Egypt at this time, they're in Moab. So I think you're thinking of it, and I'd be very happy to address those as soon as I finish this lesson. Okay, so now they're on their way back. And she said, each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show you love and enable you to find security in the house of a new husband. And she kissed them, and they all wept loudly. It's a very emotional time. They are young enough. Now, they are widows. They are not virgins, so they are not what most men at that time in that place are looking for. But, you know, there may be other situations, and that you recall from previous lessons that they had multiple wives, and if they could afford it, and frequently it was just to give a widow a place to live, since she couldn't deal with money, could not inherit. She was at the mercy of a male. Now you say, well, what about her dad? Isn't he a male? Yeah, he's a male. But he is going to get elderly, and he will probably die before she does. And men and women who were elderly needed to be provided for by their children, but especially the women, since they couldn't do business, make money. make preparations for them. All right, they're at the border. There we go. She said, she'd heard that in Moab, they paid attention to people's needs and gave them food. And, all right, they're back to Judah. And she says, y'all go back. Naomi said, return home. And trying to explain why it's necessary now for them to go back and make a new life. She says, why do you want to go with me? Am I able to give you any more sons? I said, I think she's around 40. Maybe she could. And then they're going to wait, what, 15, 20 years before they're able to get married? She's trying to show to them it just isn't something that's logical that it would work out. So I couldn't give you sons. Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? You're going to stay single? No, my daughters. It's too bitter for you. They wept loudly, and Orpha, kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Yeah, Ruth clung to her. All right? And that's a good question, and it's a great answer that will follow. Naomi says, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her God. Follow your sister-in-law. This was the answer of Ruth, the Gentile woman in the bloodline of Messiah. Very interesting. Moabitess? Yes. She says, do not persuade me to leave you. I'm reading from the Holman version. So if you've heard this same language slightly different, this is why. Do not persuade me to leave you, or to go back, or to not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do this to me even more, if anything but death separates us. This is used in the marriage vows a lot. Wherever thou goest, I will go. Here it says, wherever you go, I will follow you. Thy people will be my people. Thy God will be my God. Where thou diest, I will be married. And nothing but death, until death do us part. I have not heard this sermon preached by anybody. I've not read, but my own opinion. And I've held this opinion for a number of years. I doubt that I will ever read a scripture that will change my mind. But this is just my own thought process. This isn't something I learned in seminary or something I taught other people going to college to become preachers. I believe here, this is her statement of her conversion. When we baptize somebody, we say, upon your profession of faith, meaning since you now say that you have accepted Christ as your Savior, upon your profession of faith, I now baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I believe this is her profession of faith. She's saying, your God will be my God. Meaning, my God is now the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Your people will be my people. I'm not saying that this happened technically, but I believe she is in her own mind changing her citizenship. She is leaving Moab behind and making herself to the point that she on her own by herself is able to do it, making herself an Israeli. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined, they went ahead and traveled till they got to Bethlehem. Now, when they got to Bethlehem, all the women said, Naomi, it's been years, and this is little Naomi, young Naomi. And she said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. Mara means, remember there was water one time in a well that was bitter, and they named the well Mara. She said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. I left full, young, husband, children, family. I come back empty. Me. No hubby. No sons. No grandbabies. The Almighty has afflicted me. So Naomi came back from the land of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth the Moabitess. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. There was, among many of the laws of Moses, we look at them and we say, who needs a law like this? Why would anybody need a law like this? There's usually a very practical reason. During the 4,000 years plus of the Bible, we have dealt with slavery. We've dealt with homosexuality. We've dealt with things being so bad that God destroys everybody except one family and the fish and starts over. But in all of this variety of situations during those thousands of years, God has come up with a way of taking care of people. And this Levirate Law was a way of taking care of widows. There's another law we run into here. If you own property, it's yours. I could just picture somebody saying, well, it's my property, I can do with it what I want. No, God had a law. And the law was, when you're working your property, when you're going through, whether it's the time of the year that you're going through and digging up weeds, or if you are harvesting and you're pulling ears of corn off the corn plants, or whatever it is, on the outsides of the field, if your field is square, you, along the outside, and wherever you're working, you're going to accidentally on purpose drop some barley, some wheat, some corn, so that if you have somebody that has nothing to eat and nowhere to go, they can legally come upon your property, and whatever they see on the ground, they can pick it up, and it's theirs. So this law was in effect. The man that owns the property, his name is Boaz. Naomi, Elimelech, her dead husband, that family. It's like when I go back to Salem, Missouri, or I go back to Royal Oak, I go back to a place that used to be a little town. There are going to be people that don't know me, that never knew me, but there's going to be others say, but I knew her dad, Sam. Or somebody would say, I remember she taught school here one semester. There's going to be some that aren't going to know who you are, but there's going to be others that are going to know who you are. Now, Boaz was an older man. For whatever reason, he never got married. He was wealthy. He owned this big piece of property. And there exists a law that says if you have no food to eat, you can come on this property and you can legally gather it and make it yours. If it's food, you can eat it. If it isn't the type of food that you would eat, like corn, you could eat wheat. You might need to trade it in for something else, but it's yours. All right. Naomi, we're in the second chapter now. Naomi had a relative on her husband's side named Boaz. He was a prominent man of noble character from Elimelech's family. What's the word that pops in to your mind? Near kinsman. Not brother, but kin. Related. So now we got to look to the most related. If it had been brothers, they go to, from the oldest to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. They go by age. But since this isn't brothers, now what we have to determine is who is the nearest kin to whom? To Ruth? To Ruth's husband, Elimelech. Oh, and I just said that in my mind, I think she changed her religion and her citizenship. But we do have here a foreigner, sort of. Foreigner, because Ruth is from another country. However, if her husband had not died, and they would have had a family, even though she was a Moabitess, she would have been the mother of a Hebrew family. See how this works? So, no question that Naomi has a right to this, to the benefits of this law. But perhaps this foreigner does too. Through her husband, because if she had not been a foreigner, and if he had had another brother, and that would have married her and given her a child, whose is that child legally? Legally, that child belongs to a dead man. And the gift of giving his widow a child, to a degree, is a blessing to her. She has someone to take care of her. But, and this part of it is in Scripture in Genesis. And everything in Genesis is pre-Exodus. So everything in Genesis is pre the Israelites living in Goshen in Egypt. Because Exodus, the second book of the Bible, talks about the coming out of Egypt. So it isn't so much that whoever provides the son is doing a favor to the widow. You're also doing a favor to a deceased relative of yours. All right, now that we have those things in mind, Boaz looks around and he notices that there's a very young woman, and Ruth is there too. Ruth and Naomi, they go together into the field. And Boaz goes to Bethlehem for something, and he comes back and he says to the harvesters, the one in charge of the harvesters, whose young woman is this? Never seen her before. She's the young Moabite woman that come back from Moab with Naomi. She came and she's remained from early morning till now. They got here this morning. She rested a tiny bit in the shelter. They had a little place, you could get out of the sun. Boaz says to Ruth, the young one, the Moabite, will you, hang on. Don't gather in another field, and don't leave this one. This law about going into the field and being able to pick up things that had fallen to the ground, that was true for everybody, not just him, not just for the wealthy. But he likes her. He likes what he hears about her, and he likes what he sees. So he says, you got to gather somewhere. Stay here close to my young women, the young women that are either working for me or part of my family, or just like you, gathering what legally you're allowed to pick up. Stay close to my girls. They know how things are done. They can give you advice. And he says, I've ordered the young men not to touch you. When you're thirsty, go drink from the jars the young men have filled. In other words, the law says you can pick up grain that's on the ground. I own this place, and I'm telling you, when you're thirsty, go get water along with my family. She bowed her face to the ground, which was the correct thing to do. Why are you so kind to notice me, even though I'm a foreigner? This is important. This is the man that she is eventually going to marry. He is forming an opinion of her. He's observing her, and he's forming an opinion of her. And we do this when we meet people, and people do this about when they meet us. They watch us. They begin forming an opinion. Boaz says, everything you've done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. Well, a couple days have gone by, and he's done some checking up on her. You left your father and mother and the land of your birth, and you came to a people you didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you've done. And you'll have a full reward from the Lord. My Lord, she says to him. Now, this is not capitalized. This is not my God. But it's my lady, my Lord, yes, your grace, yes, your honor. It's a proper way of speaking to a landowner on whose property you are. You've been so kind to me. You've comforted and encouraged your slave. In other words, she's calling herself a slave. She's a nobody. Although I'm not like one of your female servants. At mealtime, Boaz says, come over here and have some bread and dip it into the sauce. And she sat beside the harvesters, and he offered her roasted grain, breadcrumbs, sort of. Be sure to let her gather grain among the bundles, and don't humiliate her. Don't stare at her. Don't act like you're better than her because you are actually a worker and she's she's on welfare. She's getting this service given to her free because the law gives it to her. So she gathered in that field. She gathered 26 quarts of barley. She went to the city where her mother-in-law was. That would be Bethlehem. And the mother-in-law says, where did you gather? May the Lord bless the man who noticed you. Ruth told her about the men she worked with. And she said, the man that I work for, his name is Boaz. And Naomi said, may he be blessed by God, who has not forsaken his kindness to the living or the dead. Strange comment. But he's being kind to her. She's alive. By being kind to Ruth, he's being kind to Naomi because she is sharing what she's picking up with Naomi. And he is being kind to the dead. His dead, somewhat distant relative, Elimelech. And she goes on and says, well, he told me to stay with this woman. And she said, it's good for you to work with his women. You're in another field, something could happen to you. Now we go to the third chapter. There's only 4 chapters. I need to check. After 11. I'm not going to finish this today. We will get through the 3rd chapter today. I will not be able to finish all of this today. I didn't think I could because we have the dealing of the legal thing and the taking off of the shoe and the I think we will finish chapter 3 and then we'll go into chapter 4 tomorrow. And there is a little bit about this law in a question that somebody asked Jesus in the New Testament. So by doing chapter 4 and by finishing up in the New Testament, next week we will finish this lesson on the Levirate Law. All right. Ruth's mother-in-law says, my daughter, shouldn't I find security for you that you can be taken care of? Now, she says, I'm going to tell you something you don't know. Boaz is our relative. This evening, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. It means you're going to be, some of it's sort of inside, some of it is just under a ceiling type structure. But we won't be working in the field. We'll be inside. I want you to wear your best and most attractive clothing. I love this story. I love the story of Esther. It's a love story where she saves all the Jews in that particular part of the Mideast by asking, and she's one of many women in the king's harem, by asking and getting a favor. And she's doing this by being very womanly. There's nothing wrong with making yourself attractive. There's nothing wrong with being kind and gentle in order to get somebody to like you. This is not being seductress. This isn't going and finding a guy and trying to turn him on. This is finding somebody you're interested in and would like him to be interested and showing your best side. We have some matters of law here. Okay. I love it when the law is honored and fulfilled and you still get romance. Okay? To say, all right, well, you have to provide a household for this woman. Okay. Let her stay with 8 or 10 other women in a room. Eat whatever the rest of them eat. You're fulfilling the law. But if there's some love and romance and you go beyond what the law says you have to do, okay, then I love that. And we really find that in this story. We find it in Esther and in Song of Solomon. But I see love and familial love on so many different levels in the story of Ruth. And that's why I don't want to hurry us through the last part of chapter 3 and chapter 4. I see God taking care of her. I see God's laws being fulfilled. I see God having provided for those that are needy. And when I see somebody fall in love and I'm just looking for the right word. Somebody is doing what they have to do, but they're in love. Isn't that much better than just yeah. All right. I was making a comment here now to somebody in our live audience. Now, she is going to tell her, and I may read a couple of the actual words, but the elderly Hebrew woman is going to tell her daughter-in-law, who doesn't understand Hebrew law and customs. She's going to lead her into the law, but also into romance. She knows that after they do this thing that they're in the threshing floor, she knows he's a single man. He's not going to go back up to the house. He's probably going to have some wine. And he's probably going to pull a blanket over himself and get pass the rest of the night right there. Naomi says to Ruth, this is what I want you to do. You go 1, 2, 3 in the morning. You sneak in there. You see if by any fact, that if it isn't true, that he has fallen asleep. If he has fallen asleep, now this sounds strange, but it isn't, and I'll explain it in a minute. He says, I want you to go to the foot of the bed. Now the bed is on the floor, right? I want you to go to the foot of the bed, and I want you to cover your feet with the bottom of the cover. Now you say, that sounds kind of immoral. That sounds like she's saying, sleep with me. Let's see. She's a Moabite. She doesn't know Jewish law. She doesn't know Jewish custom. But Boaz sure does. And so does Naomi. So when she goes and she covers herself, it's in early hours of the morning, and she covers herself, and he wakes up. She has no clue what those actions mean. You or I, because we're from a different generation, a different country, different laws, different habits, we'd say it sure looks to me like she's playing a prostitute. No. She didn't know. We don't know without looking into it a bit. He is an elderly Hebrew male. He has already checked. He knows he's related to Elimelech, and therefore to Elimelech's son, the one who is also deceived. And he knows she is saying, I need your covering. I need your protection. Let me read a few of these words. He said, let me back up. After Boaz ate and drank and was in good spirits, he went to lie at the end of the pile of barley, and she went in secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. Now, she's not laying next to him in bed. She's at the foot of the bed. He says, who are you? Remember, it's the middle of the night. I am Ruth, your slave. Spread your cloak over me. That is, cover me. Spread your cloak over me, for you are a family redeemer. I said that there was much in this story that would show us the relationships of Christ, the Redeemer, and the church. To say cover me is protect me. And she reminds him, you are a family redeemer. Somebody in this family must redeem, and you've heard me discuss the redemption centers back in the days of the blue stamps and the green stamps. And you would take your little books of stamps and you would go to a redemption center. You would give them a book of stamps. And in my case, before I went to Central America, with the books of stamps that some people gave me, I redeemed a pressure cooker because I had to make dog food. I had to make mayonnaise. I had to do things on the stove that you don't do in this country. And so I took in something and I redeemed it for something else. And she said, "You are my kin redeemer. You are going to be my protector." Okay. Well, we hope it's him because they seem to like each other. Now, part of the reason he likes her, he started checking up on her when he first saw her. Who is this one? And one of the first things he said, "I like you because you're good to the old lady. You're good to your mother-in-law." A lot more than was she charming. Did she look good? He's checking out what type of a person, of a human being is she. "I will do for you whatever you say. Don't be afraid, my daughter." Well, he is old, so he could call her my daughter, but he's emphasizing also that at this point in time, his request and so forth is it's not romantic right now. I will do whatever you say. Since all the people in my town know you're a woman of noble character, we want to protect your reputation. It's true, I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer that's closer than I. Stay here until morning. I will check with the one whose relationship to your deceased husband and Naomi's deceased husband. There is one more. He has first opportunity. I will check with him. Now you lie down until morning. So she lay down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was still dark, and he said, "Don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. It might not look good for her or for him." And it was their private business. They hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, they accomplished a great deal. "Bring the shawl you're wearing and hold it out." She got the shawl. Large fabric. She put 6 measures of barley into the shawl and went into the city. She went to her mother-in-law, Naomi, and said, "How did it go?" So Ruth told her everything the man had done. And she said, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley because he said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" He is making it known. He's not only going to redeem her, he's going to redeem the mother-in-law. "Wait, my daughter," she said, "until you find out how things go, for he won't rest until he resolves this today." That ends the 3rd chapter. Now I'm going to turn off our recording. We will be back next Sunday morning with that chapter and a little bit of the New Testament, and that will be lesson 4 and the final lesson in the Levirate Law. Until the next recording, blessings.